a beautiful place you live in. Lucky
Thank
you.
Yes.
So you work as a naturalist, and you get to go out there. How many days a week do you get to go out?
Well, it varies. I'm one of the full-time crew members. We've got a crew of about 10 or 12 people. And I work for Treasure Seekers Shell Tours, which I believe they have ads in the Beachcombing magazine regularly.
They do, and I think they have a special today, but I can't get the code. But anyway, I'll get the code eventually and we'll be able to share that. But yeah, they are one of our festival vendors. So that's great.
Yes, we have a great, passionate team, and most of our guides are naturalists as well. So we talk about the shells, but we also talk a lot about the ecosystem that produces those shells. So it's really exciting because I get to go out 5 or 6 days a week, depending on the busy season. And I get to see it literally every single day and how it changes and how it moves. And there are a lot of different things you learn on the job. A lot of people ask me, how did you get into this? Because it's so unique. And actually, I was raised here in Florida, but I didn't know anything about shells until I started working out there post-COVID. I was furloughed from my previous career during COVID. And then I found this job and my eyes were opened to this ecosystem, which I had no idea existed. And I've gone down the rabbit hole, and now you learn something new every day that there's no way to learn everything. So I'm really, really excited and blessed to be able to do that every day.
That's great. Well, I don't know if you guys know, but Sarah has written several articles for Beachcombing. So, and she has another one coming up, but her combination of knowledge and these gorgeous photos just make the articles so interesting. So I really appreciate it. I'm sure most of you magazine subscribers know that 95% of our stories come from readers like you. So if you ever want to know what we're thinking about writing about or what people are interested in, somebody will ask about something and I put it up on the website on our submissions page so you can see what people are asking. But Sarah is Sarah with an H, which I can't tell you how many times that's been helpful for me to remember. So she always says, I'm Sarah with an H. And you are also now a U.S. Coast Guard certified, licensed captain. So that's great. Yes. So was that a big project or?
It was for me. So you do have to be licensed by the Coast Guard to captain boats for pay. So if you take guests on a boat, basically, and it took, I think it was like 2 weeks or 3 weeks to get everything done, but it was lots of night classes and there was a lot more math than I thought. You have to do a lot of chart plotting and navigation training, which is very good. I'm glad that that's in there.
We don't want you losing anyone.
I know. Well, you won't get lost. That's the main thing. So if you're, if you get, and honestly, and I know some of you, I'm sure have been in areas like that. When you go out in the islands, they all look the same. So if you're not really familiar with the area, you really need somebody with you who knows exactly where they're going. So I love all of our captains who work with us because they could drive out there in their sleep if they had to. So it works really well. That's great. I saw a couple of people weren't able to see the video. I think you post that, don't you?
Yeah, it's there. It's now live on YouTube. So it should be there at that link, or if you just look for Beachcombing Magazine, the YouTube channel, you'll find it there. We have a couple of questions already in the Zoom chat. So Linda asked, I see you have a sea star. Are they common there? We lost most of ours while in California. Did disease affect your area? So there's a whole bunch of sea stars that have died here. So.
That's a good question. So that is not from our area. That one I actually found in a thrift store for $1.
There you go.
Find. I believe this is a cushion star, and I think they're predominantly found in like the lower Keys and Bahamas area. I don't think you're allowed to take those anymore. So that's why I grabbed it. I usually don't purchase shells a whole lot, just depending on where they're from. In Florida, we have rules about collecting shells that are empty, trying to make sure we leave live animals there. And people have different opinions about that. But this one I found in a thrift store and it was $1 and I was excited. So we do have sea stars here. But they're much smaller, and I haven't seen any significant changes in the population since the hurricane. I have noticed a change in the population of sea urchins. It's kind of bizarre. Since we're out there all the time, we've been able to see, more of this, less of these. And sea urchins is one thing that I've noticed we used to see all the time at super low tides. They'd be out on the mud flats eating. And I've only seen one or two since the hurricane in September. So I'm kind of bummed about that. I hope that they just moved and not like, you know, got wiped out. Maybe the food source moved, that's possible. But we started seeing more and more things like the alphabet cone, which is this guy here.
Those are so cool.
Yeah, these guys are one of my favorites. And these are one of the more desirable collectible shells because they're each unique. And they're one of a kind like snowflakes, or at least that's what they tell me about snowflakes. I don't have a lot of experience with snow.
Lucky you.
I know. But anyway, we started seeing a lot of baby alphabet cones after the storm and their egg casings from Florida cones too, which we never really saw from before the storm. So here's a baby one.
Oh, so cute.
I know, he's so small.
It looks all fresh. It's very vibrant.
I know. This one's pretty dark. So the dark ones we would call like the chocolate cones instead of the orange speckles. They're brown. But I really like finding the egg casings, which is one of my previous articles that Beachcombing magazine put out.
Yeah, so cool.
It's very nerdy. So if you're into the science of it, you'll enjoy it.
We all love the nerdy stuff.
Yes. Here's some babies. These are not cone eggs, but these are, I believe they're horse conch babies that I pulled out of one of the old egg casings I found that was dry. So after the hurricane, we found a lot of bizarre things, but following the hurricane was breeding season. So there was egg casings everywhere. So you have all these juveniles and all these crazy looking egg casings. And I don't have any to show you today. They dry out and wrinkle really easily. So it's kind of hard to store, but I did see a question about my worm snail jar and I brought it over here during the YouTube filming. Can you see that?
Oh my gosh. That's a lot of worm snails.
I know. Can you see all those?
Yes.
Pasta.
So do they live under the ground? Is there a worm? Why are they called worm snails?
So they're called worm snails because they resemble the tubular shape of worms. We have two species of worm snails. This is my longest. I'm very proud of it. Yes. Worm snails they look more like curly fries to me. So
yeah, we'll call them curly fry snails.
One of them is the Fargo worm snail, which stays in a perfect coil. And then the Florida worm snail goes all crazy directions. And so they're both called worm snails commonly. But it's one of those things that we get in a lot of islands that have like lagoons and a lot of kind of mud bank. That's where these guys tend to live. Now, they don't live underground necessarily. They're kind of free floating. They can move, I believe. They do have a foot that's extended, but they don't wash up on your normal open ocean beaches that much unless you have a lagoon nearby. So that was
another Linda has a question that says, which beach do you recommend to shell near Fort Myers without taking a boat? Is there one?
Without taking a boat, you can drive to the Sanibel beaches. You can also drive to the Marco Island beaches. And Marco Island is right next to the 10,000 Islands. That's usually where I recommend people to go. Sanibel has been a popular shelling destination for decades, but they have suffered a lot of damage since the hurricane. So I don't know if their shelling hauls have been up to where they were prior hurricane. But I know a lot of the guests and the community down here purpose to go there to support the restaurants and the businesses there. And a lot of the residents are rebuilding and in the process of getting back on their feet. So the more visitors they get, the faster that will happen. As far as the shelling goes, I've heard it's kind of, I don't know, a little bit less than what you'd find in, say, Marco Island. So if you don't have a boat, you could always drive over to Marco, and I think from Fort Myers to Marco, it's about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, not too far. So yeah. I did see a question about the colors. This is something we get a lot. The colors of shells are predominantly determined by the genetics. So if you think of a cardinal and a bluebird, right? It's just how they're made. It's in their DNA to be a specific color. And in the case of seashells, most of their color is determined by the parents. And we find that scallops are a little easier to explain this process. So we have, say, an orange one, right? And maybe like red one or a purple one. And if these two happen to reproduce together, you may end up with a dominant color in one, just like people would have brown hair that's dominant over blonde hair, or blue eyes and brown eyes. The shells have the same. And sometimes you get cross presentations, which would be like a multicolored.
Those are so cool.
Yeah, they're really pretty.
So those are all the same species. They're just different colored hair.
Pretty much, yeah. We do these, there's a slight variation between these two. Can you see, this one's got a little bit bigger of a foot. This is a rough scallop and this is a calico scallop.
Oh, okay.
Slightly different species, but the principle is the same. If you have a really vibrant shell that reproduces with another maybe duller colored shell, one color will probably take precedence. Now, there was some studies that say in the warmer waters, we'll find more vibrant colors as opposed to cold water. And actually, that's something I was really excited somebody asked, because I've done a few shell swaps with people across the world. And one of the farthest packages that I received was from Scotland. And if you follow me on Instagram, I made a video comparing what she sent me versus what we have here in Florida. That's the closest looking shell. And the color differences are very significant. The Florida shells are very vibrant, very bright, lots of reds and oranges and purples. And this package from Scotland came and she was telling me, you know, oh, I don't think you're really going to like these. These are kind of boring, but they're so different than here. I was like, give me more, send me as many as you can. And her colors are more of a muted browns and kind of a rusty red color as opposed to like bright yellow, you know. And the sizes are a little different too. So if you're interested in seeing stuff like that, you can go and watch that on the Discover Creation channel. I made a whole comparison video for those who would like.
Yeah, I went to in New Jersey, and they have tons of black scallops, and they were so stunning. And I was like, whoa, these are really cool. I'm sure they thought it was crazy picking them up. They're probably like, black scallops, but very, very pretty. So somebody did ask, do you pick up any live shells? And I hope the answer is no.
No, I don't. Well, you could pick them up. A lot of
but take them home.
No, I don't keep live shells personally. In our area of the islands, it's actually a national estuarine research reserve, so it is against the law to do that anyway. I've heard that there are some parts of Florida that you could do it if you had a proper license. But in our area, it's all restricted to no live shelling because of the research. And it's bird sanctuary down there, and there's sea turtle research and all this stuff going on. So you can't do that in that area anyway, which I don't mind. I actually really enjoy showing people the live animals. It's really fun to like tickle them, you know, and then you make them jump because, you know, they get a little nervous, but they're just snails, you know. So
yeah, do remember, don't take out the sea stars because they breathe through their skin. It would be like putting us underwater for 5 minutes, taking them out of the water for 5 minutes.
You know, and I didn't know that until I started working here and going out there. And a lot of people have concerns about sea stars even being handled even underwater because oils on your skin and sunscreen and other things that could make them sick. So it's best if you don't know that it's safe 100%, maybe just leave it there and take a picture.
Yeah. Always better to take a picture. Yeah, sure. Sea glass and stuff like that is just old trash. So it's fine.
I know. It's a little more complicated when things are alive. I did see a question about, are they harmful? There's a lot of cone species in the world that can harm you. So if you're unfamiliar, please don't pick them up. In the Pacific, especially, there's a lot of cones that can kill multiple people with one sting, and there's no antidote. So in Florida, though, ours, this is a Florida cone. I showed you the alphabet cone earlier. These guys can sting, but I've been told it's more like a bee sting. It can't kill you. I still don't want to find out, though. So if you see one that is alive, I would just put it back as quickly as you can.
Now, where is the stinger, like on that? They come out the bottom, like what I would consider the bottom of the shell, right? Isn't that where their heads are?
Yeah, so what we would normally think of the top is the spiral, but that's actually the tail end of the shell, if you will. When the animal's alive, it moves forward with the spiral facing its backside. So for those that have a stinger, I think it's called a proboscis, technically, it actually would come out of the foot area. So it's retracted until they find prey, and then they harpoon it. And I did almost get harpooned once. I have a video of it somewhere. I was looking at a little tiny cone that I found, and I didn't realize it was live. It was just tucked way inside, and I was zooming way in, and as I started to rotate it, and then I saw this in the camera, this like straw, like reaching around, and I was like, oh my goodness, it dropped. It scared me so bad. But I haven't been stung yet, so I'm just
That's good.
Make extra sure that it's empty first.
That's good. Judy asked, what was the name of the predator shells that drill the little holes?
Oh, there's a few predator snails. The main one is the moon snail group, and we have a few of those. So they would look like this.
Cute.
Yeah, and there's a few different types of them that we find here. This is one of my favorite ones. This is called a gaudy nautica. She gaudy because she's fancy.
She's very fancy.
Yeah. Now this group of mollusks have a drill bit on the end of their tongue, basically, and they bore a hole into the shells. And if you ever find a shell with a perfectly round hole that's like beveled, you could put it right on a necklace. It's probably, if it's in this area, it's probably from one of the moon snails. And they'll actually inject venom, kind of like make it into soup, and then they eat it through the hole. It's really gross. But yeah, a lot of these will eat each other. A lot of them are carnivores, and a lot of them are even cannibals. They'll eat their brothers and sisters when they're born. So the ocean's a wonderful place.
Yes, all kinds. Yeah. Somebody, Leah asked, what time is the best time of year to shell? And then like, do you wait for a certain amount of time after a storm?
Good question. So in our area of Southwest Florida, the best time to go out shelling is usually winter. So for us, that's November through March. And that's predominantly because we get cold fronts. I know, don't laugh at me, Florida cold fronts.
Yeah.
But we get more wind coming in off the Gulf of Mexico during that season. So wind is really what churns up most of the shells. I'm sure it's the same for sea glass. Any major wave action is going to bring more stuff up to the beaches. And hurricanes, however, I would say, or tropical storms, those are the best shelling you'll ever see in your life. Way better than any season. Any strong wind event like that, you're going to get tons of stuff. I probably wouldn't go the day right after a hurricane unless you know that the seas are safe, just because there's a lot of really strong currents and the water is still very energized. So don't go snorkeling right after a hurricane. We usually will book, people on a tour a couple days after, as soon as it's safe to go. And then anything we do is only really on the beach. We wouldn't go snorkeling. So you don't want to get,
because the water would be messy, or
yeah, it's going to be really cloudy too. So even if you are a snorkeler or a diver, our area is super shallow. So you can't really snorkel or dive easily. There's not a whole lot of structure. We don't have
you just crawl on the sand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and our water is tinted pretty strongly by the mangrove leaves, similar to how tea leaves dye tea brown. We have tannins in our mangrove leaves. So it'll turn the water like a slight green. So not a lot of clarity. And then when the sand is churned up, it's really hard to see anyway. So
you're just looking on the beach and the piles of shells and then the roots. Cam asked if the shells, do they reproduce seasonally, or is it all year round? Like you said, there was a bunch after the hurricane. Is that like their season, or?
So I've noticed the breeding season for most of these is going to be in the winter and early spring. Now, we have over 300 species of shells, and I haven't learned them all yet. I hope to, but most of them, especially the ones that are collectible that we'll notice, are like larger gastropods, the tulips, for example. Here's one here.
Ooh,
and the horse conch, which is this guy.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, this is one of the more desirable ones. These guys will reproduce in the winter. So we also get more shells in the winter season because when they're reproducing, they're closer to shore and they get eaten more. So we seem to find more of the empty shells because of that also. So yeah, that's a nice one.
You may have answered this already. Do you wear like any special gloves or anything when you're out searching? I mean, some of those shells look like you could cut yourself on them.
That's a good question. I don't wear gloves, predominantly because it's really hot.
That's true.
I have seen people wear gloves if they're going to be like snorkeling, because you could, if you're sifting through sand, or some of the shell piles, when I have ladies who are out looking for minis, like really, really small shells, like these are the baby horse conchs. If you're sifting through constantly, it can tear up your fingers, but not necessarily because of the mangroves, just to protect your manicure and, your fingertips. Mm-hmm. We do wear protective shoes. I would certainly recommend very strong closed-toed shoes if you go into any mangrove root system or oyster bar. Oysters will tear you up very quickly. When I first started shelling, I walked around barefoot because we're in Florida, and I sliced myself up one too many times. So I always wear shoes now. In the winter, I'm kind of wimpy in the cold weather, so I wear boots on the beach, like rubber boots. And those are really nice, actually, because you can just tromp through anything and not have to worry about shells stabbing through your shoe. I've seen a lot of beach shoes bought at, convenience stores, and they just fall apart. So if you plan on going beachcombing in an area like that for a long period of time, definitely get something sturdy, with a really good bottom that won't get pierced. So
somebody asked about that horse conch, like how long do those shells live? And
yeah,
that looks like an old one.
Yeah, so I pulled out one of the smallest that I have. Can you see that?
Oh my gosh, she's so cute. So that's the baby of that one.
Yes. So this is how it starts its life. And actually how it starts its life is the little white button at the very end. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. There's a little white nose. So that's the size when it hatches. And I, other than what's in my little baby jar here, I don't have any quite that size. But they begin developing and growing right out of the egg. And what will happen is they'll add calcium carbonate along the edge. And just like our fingernails grow out, so does their shell. And it'll get longer and it'll curve, and whatever texture is coming out of its DNA, programming, it'll build around, and then over time it spirals around and around. Now, the horse conch was previously believed to live like 35 years. But one of the more recent studies shows that the oldest one they believe to have found was only maybe 15 years old. There's actually some study that the horse conch is declining in population, which is in the Precious Predators article.
Coming soon to a magazine near you.
Yes, that's the next one coming out. There's a lot of information about this species specifically. This is the Florida state shell. Every state that is on water typically will have a state shell, except I can't figure out what Hawaii's is. Somebody asked me and I couldn't find it online. So if you know, let me know. But anyway, these guys, this one's probably, I don't know, 7. I know there is a way to tell if you look at like the rings on a tree kind of thing. But I think you have to have special lights to tell you that. And I wouldn't be able to tell you that from here. Okay. So yeah.
Do you have a favorite shell or a shell you're still looking for?
I don't have a favorite shell. I have a least favorite.
Okay, what's that?
Well, we have these big brown ones here that are called pen shells, and they're basically a big brown paddle shape, and they're not very pretty. And that's the one that sliced me real bad. So that
I see. Yeah, personal reason. Yeah, they look like it's kind of like a mussel shell, but it's a little bit transparent, right? A little bit.
It's not transparent. It's the closest thing we would have to your abalone. Actually, it has a lot of rainbow mother of pearl.
It does. Okay.
Yeah, it's made up of a lot of argonite in the buildup of the shell, from what Dr. Google says. And so it has that really reflective rainbow pattern to it on the inside. The outside is very boring, very brown, and it's very spiky, but it's basically a giant oyster. It sucks water and eats things out of the water. And so that's my least favorite. I don't really have a favorite. I have a few that I haven't been able to find for my personal collection. They're on my list.
What are those?
Well, there's some Caribbean species, like a Caribbean vase. That's one that washes up from way south into our area, usually after storms. I've seen them on the tours, but we don't keep the rare stuff from the tours, of course. So I I do have a Junonia. I'm very excited about it.
That's good.
And my husband bought me one for Christmas last year, which was very sweet. So I do have more than one, but here's one of them.
Beautiful.
And this is one
And
of
that
the,
one is highly sought after, but hard to find because it lives really deep, right?
correct. Yeah. And now really deep is relative. For
Okay.
Florida, it's very deep.
Okay. Like
These guys
2
live
feet.
about 60 to 100 miles offshore
okay.
from where I shell.
Okay.
So it has to travel a long way.
Got
So
it.
they're usually broken. This one was probably dug up by a trawler. This is the one that he bought me. It's probably, caught in a fish net or something from the shrimpers. That's where a lot of the perfect ones that you might see in a store, they come from there. But when they get to the beach, a lot of people have looked even for a piece of one and never found a piece. And we do find pieces. We found one actually last week. We found 1 or 2 of the pieces, which is very cool. So that's very lucky though. If you find a Junonia, it's considered like once in a lifetime luck. So go play the lottery or something.
Now you mentioned Dr. Google, who's always a fine place to find things. But do you have any books that you recommend that people can use?
Yes, I do. We use the Florida's Living Beaches book, which is, we can add a link, I'm sure. It's on Amazon, and there's different editions that come out every couple of years. And Florida's Living Beaches is a great resource for our crew as well as the public, because it has a really big, clear photo, which is appreciated, of what it is, and then a very basic description of what you would want to know about that species. And it covers everything from birds, crabs, sea stars, seaweed, and shells. The main section in the middle is shells. But there's all kinds of stuff that if you find something random on the beach in Florida, it will help you identify what it is. And it'll also show you what area of Florida's peninsula it lives. So if you find an oddball and you're like, I shell here a lot, I don't recognize this, you can go find the picture, and then it'll say, this is from this area or the south or the north or the Keys or whatever. It's very helpful. Also, the Bailey Matthews Shell Museum, which is the National Shell Museum. I believe it's the only shell museum in the United States. It's located in Sanibel Island, and they have a really great website and resource there, as well as an app. If you take a photo of it in your hand, it'll identify it for you.
That's cool.
Yes, I don't know that it works with shells from the entire world. They are building the database constantly, but every Florida shell that I've had mistaken identity for, it helps me, or at least gives me an idea that I can ask Dr. Google, and then there's more resources there. And Facebook groups and clubs where a lot of people with the same interest, they're really great resources. I've only been doing this for a few years, and I feel like I've learned a lot. But every time I ask a question, I find out just how much I don't know. So ask questions, because out there is somebody who probably knows. So that's a good question.
That's very cool. So do you think someday you're going to want to have your own shelling tour company?
Oh gosh, I don't know. That's a lot of work.
Maybe you could just be a captain with treasure seekers.
Yeah, I love treasure seekers. We've got a really great group there, and it's one of those things, I really like photography. I really like teaching. I love helping people understand more about the beautiful creation around us and the tiny details of some of these shells. And I found things in the past that I can't identify. And there are things like, I do eventually, but it takes me a long time. And I feel like if we studied the ocean half as much as we did space, we would know so much more. I just learned this past week, there's a sea tunicate that I see all the time on the beach. And if you don't know, a tunicate is one of those squishy blob things that are categorized as like plant/animal, and usually something that people want nothing to do with when they're walking on the beach. But this one, it's called a mangrove tunicate, and it actually is used in drug chemicals, like for medications for cancer.
Wow.
And I'm like, how do we not know this? Why aren't we telling people about this? It's of course something you'd probably walk by going, ew, what is that? There's so much out there, and we don't know, how many more resources there are. This is a Wentel trap. This is one that I showed in the video. It's really small, and it's got like super tiny details to it. This is one, people love these, especially
They're adorable.
Oh, they're so cute. And people who don't have the ability to walk long distances on the beach, they just want to sit and dig through a pile. This is like gold. And these are really hard to see because they're white. And in Florida, most of our sand is white or a light beige. And when I first learned about these, I was like, are you kidding? It took me like a year and a half to finally find one.
Really? Wow.
They blend in so easily. It's like finding a grain of rice in a pile of rice that all, like they all look the same. So every time you go out, you learn something new. And I love what we do because it's helping educate. And of course, we get tourists who are just out to see the dolphins and, the beautiful sunshine and away from snow. But we do have quite a few community members who love coming out with us all the time because they learn something new every day. So
I'm sure you find different things each time. So that's cool.
Yes, all the time. Yeah. I'm trying to
so, all right. So on your list to find is, I can't remember now. So, a shell from far away.
Yes. The Caribbean base shell is on my list.
Base shell. Okay.
And those are really hard to find. The other one that was on my list was a golden olive, which we do find there a lot. I don't have one. Here's my jar of olives.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I have found a lot of olives.
They're, it's addicting, to be honest.
Yeah.
So if you've not seen, these are called lettered olives. These are the olives that we get here. And they're very polished and they're very shiny. And a golden olive is the same species as a lettered olive, but it has that super recessive color traits, kind of like a red hair and green-eyed person. And as far as I've been able to find, it's just a lettered olive that is orange or yellow, not brown. And I've tried to see if it's maybe just like another species or anything, but as far as I could tell, it's just like a genetic freak occurrence that it happens to be yellow or gold. So that's on my list, but we only see those on the islands once every 6 or 8 months. So if you follow the treasure seekers company social media platforms, they post pictures of their finds all the time. And there's a bunch of golden olives that people have found. And I'm always like, oh, I'm so jealous. Yeah, that's okay. Mine will find me someday. It'll be fine.
Yeah, the treasure seekers and Sarah's Discover Creation. It's just really fun because they'll post whatever cool thing people have found. And Sarah has lots of videos, which I like watching, but I mean, a lot of fun stuff. So I really appreciate, and I do appreciate you sharing your articles too. So she has a story coming up in the next issue. Also, remember you guys, we're voting on the cover for the calendar, and one of Sarah's photos is going to be in there, so you can vote for her. So that's again at beachcombing.fun. You can find the link there. And if you guys have any other questions, you can bug Sarah on Instagram, or and the video should be available for you to watch again. And I just went over and I didn't see the live chat, but I'll try and make sure I can find it. But you can watch that again and comment on her video, and ask her any other questions there. And then Sarah, I don't know if you remember any of the questions that people asked that you wanted to have us post the link, but just send them to me and we'll get them in the chat.
Yes.
So
thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for doing the video and all those beautiful close-ups of the shells. That was really gorgeous, and we really appreciate it. And, whoa, that's beautifully frosted.
Yes.
And
it's taller. There have been others that have been found, and some of them are shorter. So it must have been like a later edition or a new edition. I don't know, but
maybe it's an older edition. Who knows? When they were more generous with their servings.
Yeah. I've seen some that still have like the raised lettering in the glass. This one doesn't. So
is there anything on the bottom?
There is. Yes. It says trademark bottle, PA, and then Erie, ERIE.
Well, that's probably where it was bottled.
There you go.
So Coke was bottled by zillions and zillions of different bottle manufacturers. So they all had a license to bottle the Coke all around the country and all around the world. So yours was from Erie, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I'd love to know how old it is.
Send me a picture of the bottom and we'll get it over to the bottle guy.
Yeah, I'd love to. That'll be fun.
Beautiful. A lot of times the sea glass in Florida isn't as worn because the waves aren't as big, and the surface of the sand is not, it's sand, it's like shells, not rocks. So
Right. Yeah.
it's not as abrasive.
I mean,
Like where John lives in Washington, there's giant waves and lots of rocks. And so it batters everything. And the North Sea of England is the same way. Beautiful sea glass because it's got giant waves and rocky shores. But
here's another one of my favorites.
Oh,
This is an angel wing, which I think you've had an article in there about angel wings before. It's a bivalve. And they're really fragile. So if you can see one of my jars over there, a whole bunch of white ones. But you have to be so careful with these because they'll crack if you look at them wrong.
Sand dollars.
I know, like sand dollars, yes. And the Mirexes are another favorite of mine. Lots of texture.
Now, why do they have all those decorations? Is that defensive or?
That's the belief, yes. And a lot of discussion has been going on about, amongst my crew. I was having a conversation with one of our other shell guides about why are most of these orange. There's so many orange and like kind of yellow tone colors in the Florida shells. And, what is it? Because it doesn't provide defense. Like white might blend in better and help them hide, but orange just sticks right out. So then we started talking about diving and how if you go deeper into the ocean, you start to lose certain wavelengths of color, right? Red disappears and certain, the deeper you go, the color palettes change. And so my theory is we get a lot of orange because maybe at the depth that these live, they blend in with the bottom, and that's the best defense color to camouflage, and that the theory I think around the textures of all of these guys is the same. It's defense. And a really great example of that too is the spiny jewel box.
Yeah.
These guys really hurt to step on. And this is not a matched pair, but it's close. These guys are super spiny, even from the time they're little. This one here is a juvenile, and he's got lots of pokies.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yikes.
And that's, again, a defense mechanism. Makes it
so
much
nobody
less
wants to eat that.
No.
That would hurt going down.
Yeah, that's cool. Oh, someone's asking about the milk of magnesia glass.
Yeah, so we do have there's a site called sha.org, and I can't remember, Society of Historical Archaeology. I don't know what it is, but they have a whole section on bottles, and it's great. And I will, I'll find that link for you. But yeah, they have the milk of magnesia. Those bottles were made in Maryland usually. So you'll sometimes see an M on the bottom of those bottles, and that's how you can tell where they were made. But yeah, I'll find that the site for you.
Yeah, that'd be cool. We get lots of glass, but it's usually just bare bottle shards. So we still pick them up to get rid of them, but that's another reason why you want to wear shoes. Florida is a very celebration destination that's popular. So lots of bottle shards.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to put that site for you right there. So you can read more than you ever wanted to know about bottles.
That's awesome. And that's what I love about meeting you, Chrissy, and the whole Beachcombing community and your magazine followers and subscribers, because I would have no idea anything about glass bottles or fossils and mudlarking
in England.
Yes, it's
I know.
Fascinating.
I know.
This is really great to be a part of. So thank you for having me.